6 years ago, my wife humiliated me in court, stripping me of my pride, my home, and nearly my son. They call me a failure, but I refuse to stay broken. This is a story of how I clawed my way back, exposed a man who tried to replace me, and discovered the only revenge that truly matters. The day Melissa humiliated me in court still burns in my chest like a brand that refuses to fade. 6 years ago, I walked into the Brookhaven family courthouse wearing my one good suit, freshly pressed, thinking maybe, just maybe, I could salvage a shred of dignity from the wreckage of my marriage. I was wrong. Melissa knew exactly what she was doing. She stood there, perfect hair, perfect posture, looking every bit the ambitious attorney she'd become. And then, with a voice sharp enough to cut glass, she declared before the judge, our neighbors, even my own mother sitting in the back row, that I was a man who couldn't perform his duties as a husband. That line wasn't about bills or chores. Everyone knew what she meant. She wanted it on record that I was inadequate in the bedroom, that I couldn't satisfy her, that I was less than a man. The whispers started before the gavel even came down. People shifted in their seats. Some smirked, others avoided my eyes altogether. I wanted the ground to swallow me whole. 6 years married, one son together, and my entire reputation in town reduced to a punchline in a matter of seconds. The judge didn't care about my pride, of course. Judges don't deal in pride. They deal in evidence and perception. Melissa was a polished attorney, the one who knew how to wield words like a weapon. I was a construction foreman who showed up with callous hands and nothing but the truth, and in that room, the truth didn't matter. She walked away with the house, the custody arrangement, even the dog she used to complain about shedding. I was left with alternate weekends with Noah, a rented apartment over a pizza shop, and a monthly child support bill that bled my bank account dry. But none of that stung as much as the humiliation, the way she had weaponized intimacy, twisting private struggles into public ammunition. The look in my mother's eyes, pity mixed with shame, was worse than the judge's ruling. After the hearing, I walked out into the cold Massachusetts air and lit a cigarette, something I hadn't done in years. My hands shook as badly as they had the first time I smoked behind the high school bleachers. I stared at the courthouse steps, half expecting Melissa to come storming out and apologize, tell me it was all just a tactic, not meant to cut as deep as it did. She didn't. She walked right past me with her lawyer and her new boyfriend waiting at the curb. Yes, there was already a new boyfriend. Adrian Blake. Tech money, slick smile. The kind of guy who called contractors like me blue-collar warriors to sound relatable before driving off in his Tesla. I caught the way Melissa leaned into him, her hand resting on his chest like he was her savior. As if our marriage hadn't even cooled before she found herself another man to warm her bed. I should have shouted. I should have told her that all the nights she claimed I was too tired from work, too distracted, too rough around the edges, she was already looking for someone else. But I didn't. My throat locked up, and all I could do was watch Noah climb into her SUV, his little backpack bouncing against his shoulder. He waved at me through the window. I waved back, trying to smile, and then the car was gone. The rest of that day blurred into a haze of cheap whiskey and unanswered calls. My brother Ryan tried to drag me out of the apartment that night, said I needed to get back on the horse. But I wasn't ready. I didn't want another woman. I wanted the one who had just ripped my life to shreds in front of an entire town. Lying in bed, staring at the cracked ceiling, I thought about the word Melissa had used, duties. As if sex were a chore, a checkbox I failed to tick. But the truth was more complicated. I worked 12-hour days on construction sites, hauling lumber, managing crews, inhaling dust until my lungs burned. Some nights, I came home too tired to do more than collapse. Other nights, I wanted her, reached for her, but she'd already turned away, claiming headaches or deadlines. And sometimes, yes, I hesitated, worried about rejection, worried about her sighs when things didn't last as long as they used to. We were two people drifting apart, and instead of reaching for me, she sharpened that distance into a knife. When the court papers were signed, it wasn't just a marriage that ended. Something inside me snapped. I stopped believing I could be enough for anyone, not just as a husband, but as a man. People in Brookhaven never let me forget it either. At the hardware store, I'd catch whispers. That's him, Melissa's ex. At the bar, I'd see pitying glances from women who used to flirt with me before Melissa's little performance in court. Pride is a fragile thing. Mine had been shattered, scattered across those polished courthouse floors, never to be gathered whole again. But here's the thing about hitting rock bottom. Once you're down there, you start clawing your way back up. That night, staring at my empty apartment and the faded photograph of Noah taped to my fridge. I made myself a promise. Melissa could take the house, the money, even my reputation, but she wasn't going to take my son. She wasn't going to take every last piece of me. And so began the long, brutal climb. The Monday after the divorce hearing, I showed up at the job site an hour early. The air smelled like wet concrete and pine from the lumber stacked in neat piles. I needed the distraction, needed to drown the humiliation still clinging to me like cement dust on skin. Work was all I had left, and if Melissa wanted to paint me as a failure, I'd damn well prove her wrong. Coal Contracting had been just a name scribbled on a legal pad back then. 3 guys with tool belts, a rusted pickup, and a reputation for getting small jobs done on time. We took what we could: porches, kitchen remodels, roof patches, anything that paid enough to keep food in the fridge. But while Melissa was busy sipping wine with Adrian at Brookhaven's new bistro, I was slowly pouring every ounce of myself into that business. The first few months after the divorce were brutal. I came home to a shoebox apartment that smelled of garlic and grease from the pizza place downstairs. The mattress was secondhand, the wallpaper peeling. But on the nights Noah stayed with me, I cooked the spaghetti, taught him how to hammer nails into scrap wood, let him stay up late watching baseball. I wanted him to feel like this little rented space was still a home. Cooking became therapy. At first, I was hopeless. Burn eggs, undercooked chicken, smoke alarms screaming at midnight. But practice turned necessity into habit, and habit into something close to pride. By the time Noah turned 7, I could whip up a decent roast chicken, pancakes from scratch, even his favorite, mac and cheese that didn't come from a box. Business grew, too. One client referred another, and before long, we were booked out months in advance. I learned to estimate costs better, negotiate with suppliers, and manage the chaos of 3 job sites at once. By the end of the second year, I'd save enough for a down payment on a modest Cape-style house with a patch of backyard just big enough for a swing set. When Noah saw it for the first time, he grinned so wide I thought my chest might break. But Brookhaven never forgets. Small towns like that, memories stick like burrs. Every trip to the hardware store meant whispers about Melissa's courtroom performance. Men who'd once envied me now looked at me like a cautionary tale. Women who'd once smiled across the bar shifted their eyes away. I heard it all in the laughter that stopped too quickly, the pity in the cashier's tone when she asked how Noah was doing. I told myself it didn't matter. Pride was expensive, but keeping my son's weekends intact mattered more. Still, I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel the sting. Lying in bed at night, staring at the ceiling fan, I'd replay Melissa's words in my head. A man who couldn't perform his duties as a husband. Sex had always been a tender subject between us. Early on, we couldn't keep our hands off each other. Stolen moments in the truck, quick touches in the kitchen that led to long nights tangled in sheets. But as the years passed, the spark dimmed. Long hours on job sites left me drained, while Melissa's career demanded late nights at the firm. We still tried, but it felt like our bodies were speaking different languages. Sometimes it was her pulling away, sometimes me hesitating, afraid of disappointing her again. And then came the excuses, the silences, the slow erosion of intimacy. Melissa had chosen to weaponize that erosion, to turn something private into a public execution. And even as I built a life for myself brick by brick, that humiliation followed me like a shadow. One night, about a year after the divorce, I ran into an old friend at Murphy's Tavern. Kelly Barrett. She'd gone to high school with us, married a banker, divorced 2 years later. She looked good, better than good, jeans hugging her hips, hair falling loose over her shoulders. She leaned against the bar, smiled, and said, "Ethan Cole, still alive after Melissa tried to kill you in court?" We laughed, and for a moment, the weight lifted. There was something in the way her hand brushed mine when she passed me her phone to show pictures of her kids. A spark, a reminder that maybe I wasn't as broken as Melissa wanted me to believe. I walked to her car that night, the summer air thick with the scent of honeysuckle. For a second, I thought about kissing her, testing if desire still lived somewhere inside me. But I stopped, not because I didn't want to, but because I wasn't ready. My pride, my scars, they weren't healed enough to risk tearing open again. So instead, I threw myself back into grind, contracts, invoices, early mornings, late nights. Progress was slow but steady. Noah thrived. He loved my little house, the backyard, the Saturday pancakes. He didn't care what the town whispered. Didn't care that his mom looked down on my work boots and flannel shirts. To him, I was just Dad, the guy who showed up who kept his promises, who built forts out of scrap wood and let him fall asleep on the couch watching the Red Sox. And maybe that was enough. Maybe rebuilding didn't mean silencing the gossip or winning back dignity in Brookhaven's eyes. Maybe it just meant keeping my son close, building a foundation he could stand on, even if mine had been shattered. I didn't know it then, but Melissa wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. The Brookhaven Harvest Festival was one of those town traditions that refused to die. Every October, Main Street closed down for hayrides, caramel apples, and booths selling overpriced crafts. Kids darted through crowds with sticky fingers. Teenagers loitered near the Ferris wheel, and parents pretended they weren't exhausted. For Noah, it was heaven. For me, it was a reminder that no matter how much I rebuilt, this town had a long memory. That year, Noah begged me to take him. He wanted the pumpkin contest, the rides, and, most importantly, the fried dough stand. I agreed, because saying no to him felt impossible, even when I knew it meant putting myself back under the microscope of Brookhaven gossip. We were halfway through the festival, powdered sugar clinging to Noah's cheeks, when I heard the voice I'd hoped to avoid. Ethan, Melissa. She stood there in a cranberry red coat, hair styled in loose curls that caught the autumn sun just right. She looked like she'd stepped out of a glossy magazine spread about successful women enjoying small-town charm. And on her arm, like a well-tailored accessory, was Adrian Blake. He was everything I wasn't: polished, smug, the kind of guy who wore cashmere to a pumpkin patch. His hand rested at the small of Melissa's back, and the way she leaned into him made my stomach twist. Noah spotted her first. "Mom!" He ran to her, arms outstretched, and she scooped him up in a hug that made my chest ache. She looked genuinely happy to see him. I'll give her that. But then her eyes flicked back to me, and the warmth evaporated. "Well, this is unexpected," she said, her smile polite, her tone sharp. "I live here, Melissa," I replied flatly. "It's a festival, not a private gala." Adrian chuckled, that smug half-laugh of his. "Festivals are fun, aren't they? Brings the whole community together." His voice carried the faintest trace of condescension, like he was humoring a child. Melissa tilted her head, examining me like I was a case file. "Actually, this is a good opportunity. Adrian and I were talking about custody. We think it's time to revisit the arrangement." I felt my pulse quicken. "Revisit?" She shifted Noah onto her hip, her diamond ring glinting in the sun. "Ethan, you know I've always wanted what's best for Noah. With Adrian and I traveling more, business opportunities, conferences, it's becoming difficult to juggle weekends. We were thinking maybe you'd be willing to give up your time so Noah can have more consistency." "Consistency?" I repeated, my voice sharp. "You mean less time with his father?" Adrian placed a hand on Melissa's shoulder, the gesture both possessive and performative. "Look, man, Noah deserves stability. A role model who understands real success. Don't take it the wrong way. It's just reality." My fists clenched at my sides. "Reality is, I've been there every weekend. Every pickup, every ball game. Don't talk to me about being a role model." Noah, sensing the tension, squirmed in Melissa's arms. "Dad," he asked softly. I forced myself to breathe, to keep my voice steady. "Why don't you go get another fried dough, bud? My treat." He hesitated, then nodded, bolting toward the stand with a smile. As soon as he was out of earshot, I turned back to Melissa. "You're not taking my weekends. Not now, not ever." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "Ethan, be reasonable. Courts look for stability, and Adrian and I can provide." "You mean Adrian's money can provide?" I cut in. Her eyes flashed. Adrian, smug as ever, smiled like he'd just won. "You can fight this if you want," he said casually. "But Melissa and I have resources. Lawyers. Influence. Do you really want Noah caught in the middle of a messy court battle?" I wanted to hit him. God, I wanted to plant my fist right in that smug smile. But I didn't. Because one thing Melissa had taught me in court 6 years ago: lose your temper, lose everything. Instead, I took a step closer, dropping my voice to a low growl only they could hear. "You think money makes you a father? You think a new suit and a fancy car buys you the right to tell me when I see my son? You're wrong. No one knows who I am. And no amount of cash or courtroom games will change that." Melissa shifted uncomfortably. Adrian's smirk faltered just for a second. That small victory was enough to keep me steady. "Enjoy the festival," I said finally, turning on my heel. I found Noah at the fried dough stand, powdered sugar covering his hands. He looked up at me, grinning. "Dad, can we ride the Ferris wheel next?" I forced a smile, though inside, a storm was building. Yeah, buddy, Ferris wheel it is. As we rode, the town spread out below us in autumn colors. I held Noah close, his laughter echoing in my ears. But all I could think about was Melissa's words, Adrian's smug face, and the cold certainty that another battle was coming. This time, though, I wouldn't be blindsided. This time, I'd be ready. It happened on a Tuesday. I was out in the yard, leveling a frame for a deck extension when the white sedan pulled up. At first, I thought it was a potential client. Clipboard in hand, polo shirt, the whole professional look. But then I saw the envelope. Thick, official. My stomach dropped before he even said the words. Ethan Cole? Yeah. He handed it over like he was delivering a pizza. You've been served. I didn't open it right away. Just stood there, envelope heavy in my hand. As the sedan rolled off, my crew kept hammering in the background, oblivious, while I felt the ground shift beneath me. When I finally tore it open, the words hit like a punch to the gut. Petition to modify custody. Melissa was suing for full custody of Noah. Her claims were as sharp as they were false. Unstable income, erratic behavior, inability to provide a stable home. She even had the audacity to claim I was financially insecure, despite the fact I had built my company from nothing while she tied herself to Adrian's sinking ship. I drove straight to Claire Donovan's office. Claire was a divorce attorney with a reputation for being as ruthless as she was brilliant. Short, sharp-tongued, with a glare that could peel paint. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. Let me guess, she said, sliding the papers across her desk. Melissa wants Noah full-time. I nodded. She's saying I'm unfit, that I can't provide stability. Claire's eyes flicked across the petition, her jaw tightening. Typical. With Adrian's money, she's got the resources to drag this out as long as she wants. Judges like stability, Ethan, and right now she's trying to paint you as anything but. I've got a house, a business. I built everything back from scratch. I argued. And that's good, Claire admitted. But perception is what matters. Melissa's an attorney. She knows how to twist the narrative. She'll wave around Adrian's wealth like it's proof of a better life for Noah. I slumped back in the chair. So what do I do? Claire leaned forward, her tone firm. We fight, but you need to be smart. No outbursts, no late payments, no missed pickups. She's building a case, and you can't give her a single crack to wedge it open. Understand? I nodded, though my chest burned with frustration. That night, Noah sat at the kitchen table doing homework, his brow furrowed in concentration. I watched him, this boy who still lit up when I picked him up on Fridays, who begged for pancakes every Saturday morning, who hugged me so tight at drop-off that Melissa had to peel him away. The thought of losing him gutted me. Over dinner, I forced myself to stay calm. Hey, bud, how's school? He shrugged. Good. Mom says we might go on a trip soon. With Adrian. The fork slipped in my hand. A trip? Yeah. She said it might be easier if I stayed with him all the time, since you're always busy with work. He said it so casually, like repeating the weather. My throat tightened. Melissa was already planting seeds, twisting his little mind into thinking I was enough. I swallowed hard and managed to smile. Work keeps me busy, yeah, but you know what? Everything I do, it's for you. Always. He smiled, not fully understanding, and went back to his math problems. Later that night, after he'd fallen asleep, I sat at the kitchen table staring at the petition. Melissa wasn't just coming after custody. She was coming after my pride, my reputation, my very identity as a father. She humiliated me once in court. Now she wanted to erase me entirely. The old me, the broken man who'd walked out of that courthouse 6 years ago, might have crumbled, but I wasn't that man anymore. I had scars, yes, but also steel. And if Melissa wanted war, then war was exactly what she'd get. Still, the thought gnawed at me. She had Adrian's money, Adrian's influence, and her own legal expertise. I was outmatched, and Claire knew it. When I left her office, she'd given me one final warning. Ethan, custody fights aren't about truth. They're about proof. And right now, Melissa's stacking hers. You need to be ready, because this is going to get ugly. Ugly. That word sat in my chest like lead. I didn't know then just how right she was. It started like any other Friday. I picked Noah up from school, his backpack slung over one shoulder, his chatter filling the truck as he told me about a science project. We stopped for ice cream on the way home. Our tradition. Chocolate for him, coffee flavor for me. We laughed, sticky fingers and all, until the day took a turn I never saw coming. We were halfway through dinner when the knock came. Not a neighborly knock. Hard, sharp, the kind of knock that carries authority. I opened the door to two uniformed officers. Ethan Cole? Yeah. You need to come with us. Noah peeked around me, confusion on his face. Dad, what's this about? I demanded. One officer held up a paper. We got a report of a child abduction. Melissa Harding claims you took your son against custody arrangements. My blood went cold. My son? It's my weekend. Check the schedule. Check the papers. They didn't care. They stepped inside, the way cops do when they're already convinced of something. Noah clung to my arm, his eyes wide. Dad, what's happening? I crouched to meet his gaze. It's okay, buddy. Just stay calm. I'll fix this. They took me in for questioning. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, the room reeking of stale coffee and disinfectant. They asked the same questions over and over. When did you pick Noah up? Did Melissa know? Why didn't you answer your phone at 7 p.m.? I answered everything calmly, firmly. I had the pickup slip from the school. I had text from Melissa confirming it was my weekend. And at 7 p.m., I'd been at the gas station. Security cameras would show it. Hours later, Detective Laura Jennings walked in. She wasn't just any detective. She'd been in my graduating class, back when life was simpler. She'd been the quiet one with sharp eyes, and those eyes were just as sharp now. She sat across from me, flipping through the file. Ethan, I'm going to be straight with you. Melissa's building something here. False reports, allegations. She's creating a paper trail. You need to be careful. The words hit harder than the accusation itself. Melissa wasn't just fighting dirty. She was trying to paint me as dangerous. The kind of father who'd snatch his own son. Laura leaned in. My advice? Don't give her anything she can use. Don't lose your temper. Document everything. Because trust me, this isn't the last time she'll pull something like this. They let me go after verifying my alibi. Noah had been taken to Melissa's by then. I drove home to an empty house, the silence louder than any noise. Sitting at the kitchen table, I stared at the untouched board game Noah, and I had planned to play that night. My chest ached with a mix of rage and helplessness. Melissa wasn't just trying to win custody. She was trying to erase me from Noah's life by making me look like a threat. Later, my phone buzzed with a text from Melissa. Consider this a warning. Ethan, if you keep fighting me, you'll regret it. I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. Every instinct screamed to call her, to unleash every ounce of fury I had bottled up. But Laura's voice echoed in my head. Don't give her anything she can use. So I didn't reply. Not yet. Instead, I poured myself a drink, sat on the back porch, and stared at the swing set in the yard. Noah's swing set. Melissa could play games, could twist the system, could even humiliate me in court again. But I wasn't giving up my son. This wasn't just a custody battle anymore. It was war. And wars aren't won by anger alone. They're won by patience, by evidence, by striking when the enemy thinks they've already won. Melissa thought she had me cornered. She was wrong. After Melissa's false abduction stunt, I thought maybe she'd back off, that she'd gotten her shock value headline, and would retreat for a while. I should have known better. People like Melissa don't stop when they're ahead. They push until you're on your knees. It started small. A whisper here, a rumor there. Parents at Noah's school started giving me sidelong looks at pickup. One mother wouldn't meet my eyes, just tug her son away as if I carried some contagion. I didn't understand until Laura called me in. You need to hear this, she said, sliding her notepad across the desk. Scrawled notes from anonymous callers. Ethan Cole seen following a school bus. Ethan Cole loitering outside the playground. Ethan Cole makes his son uncomfortable. I nearly tore the notepad in half. This is bullshit. I don't even get near the school, except for pickup. Laura's voice stayed steady, but her eyes softened with something like pity. I know, Ethan, but she's building consistency. A file. That way, when she takes us to court, it looks like a pattern of behavior. Melissa was creating a phantom version of me. Stalker, unstable, dangerous. Every time my phone buzzed, I half expected it to be another accusation. My reputation, already fragile in Brookhaven, was being bled dry by whispers. At the grocery store, a clerk I'd known since high school said, "Heard you had some trouble with Noah. Everything okay?" His tone wasn't concern, it was suspicion. At Murphy's Tavern, a guy from my crew joked about me needing to stay away from playgrounds. Joke, but the kind of joke that sticks. It wasn't just talk either. Jobs I'd been lined up offer started slipping away. We went with someone else, client said, even after weeks of negotiation. Too polite to admit it, but I knew. Nobody wants their new deck built by the guy rumored to stalk kids. That's when I called Ryan. My brother wasn't just family. He was a state police detective. Steadier than me, less hot-headed, but with the same refusal to back down. She's playing a long game, I told him, pacing the length of my kitchen. She's poisoning the well until there's nothing left of me for the court to trust. Ryan listened without interrupting, the way he always did. Finally, he said, if Adrian's behind this, we dig. Guy like him doesn't stay clean forever. Adrian, I asked, you think this is him, not just Melissa? Ryan's laugh was dry. Melissa is ambitious, but Adrian, he's a manipulator. Guys like that don't just want to win, they want to bury you. He's pulling strings, Ethan. And if I'm right, there's dirt. Everyone like him has dirt. The thought stuck in my mind. Melissa might have been the one filing paperwork and whispering the judge's ear, but Adrian had the resources, the strategy. He had money to burn, influence to spread, and he was using both to grind me into dust. That night, lying awake in my bed, I thought about Melissa in Adrian's arms, about how she used to curl up against me the same way, about how her skin had once burned under my hands, how she'd whispered promises in the dark. Then I thought about her twisting those same lips into lies, about Adrian's smug hand on her back at the festival, and rage burned hotter than desire ever had. I wasn't just fighting for custody anymore. I was fighting for my son's future, for my own name, for the right to walk into my town without being treated like pariah. And maybe, just maybe, for the satisfaction of tearing that smug bastard Adrian down piece by piece. Ryan promised to start digging. But you need to keep your nose clean, Ethan. No yelling matches in public. No giving them exactly what they want. Let me handle the digging. You handle staying steady. Steady? Easy for him to say. Every fiber of me wanted to storm Melissa's house. Shout until the windows rattled. Demand she stop using Noah as a pawn. But Laura's warning echoed in my head. Don't give her anything she can use. So I swallowed the anger. I worked my jobs, cooked Noah pancakes on weekends, helped with homework, and pretended like whispers didn't cut deeper than knives. But inside, I was coiled tight, waiting. And one night, as Noah slept in his room, Ryan called back. His voice was low, conspiratorial. You were right to be suspicious. Adrian's past isn't clean. Not even close. I gripped the phone, heart pounding. What did you find? Ryan exhaled slowly, like he knew what he was about to say would change everything. Enough to show the whole damn town who Adrian Blake really is. Enough to turn this game around. For the first time in weeks, I smiled, not because the war was over, but because I finally had a weapon of my own. Ryan didn't give me everything at once. That wasn't his style. He believed in building a case piece by piece, like framing a house. Lay the foundation, set the beams, don't rush it or the whole thing collapses. But even his first scraps of intel on Adrian were enough to make my blood boil. His company's a shell, Ryan told me over beers at my kitchen table. On paper, it looks flashy, tech innovation, cloud integration, all the buzzwords. But peel back the layers and it's debt lawsuits and investors pulling out faster than he can replace them. He's circling the drain. I sat back, gripping the bottle so hard the glass bit into my palm. So all that talk, all that smug condescension about real success, it's bullshit. Ryan smirked. Most commends is... The more he dug, the darker it got. Adrian had been married twice before. Both wives walked away broke, their savings gutted, their credit wrecked. In one case, he'd even convinced the spouse to take out a second mortgage to help with expansion. Expansion turned out to be a private account in his name, drained before the ink on the divorce papers was dry. Melissa was in deep, though she didn't know it yet. Ryan found records tying her law practice's finances to Adrian's ventures. Joint accounts, shared investments, even her retirement savings funneled into his black hole of a company. She'd gone all in, betting everything on a man who treated women like stepping stones. Part of me wanted to laugh. Melissa, the same woman who once shredded me in court for not being ambitious enough, had tied her whole future to a fraud. But another part of me, the part that still remembered the curve of her back in bed, the way she used to whisper Noah's name like a prayer, felt something colder. Pity, maybe, or disgust. I asked Ryan why no one had nailed Adrian yet. If the evidence was as bad, how had he stayed afloat? Because guys like him are good at spinning the story, Ryan explained. When lawsuits hit, he calls them frivolous. When investors bail, he claims market volatility. He's slippery. And until someone strings it all together, he looks untouchable. I thought about Melissa, blinded by his charm. She'd always loved status. The right house, the right wine, the right circles. Adrian had packaged himself as all of that and more, and she'd eaten it up like candy. One night, after Noah went to bed, I sat on the porch staring into the dark, bourbon in hand, letting the anger roll through me. Melissa had tried to destroy me in court, paid me as less than a man, and now she was tethered to someone who would ruin her completely. Maybe that was justice. But justice alone wasn't enough. I needed to prove it. To her, to the court, to Brookhaven. I kept imagining her reaction. Her perfect lawyer composure cracking as Ryan laid out bank records, lawsuits, testimony. The whispers that had haunted me for years would finally have a new target. For once, I wouldn't be the one humiliated. But then my chest tightened. Because it wasn't just about revenge. It was about Noah. Adrian wasn't just draining Melissa's accounts. He was positioning himself as Noah's real role model. If Adrian's empire collapsed, and it would, he'd take Melissa down with him, and Noah would be the collateral damage. Ryan saw the storm in my eyes. You've got to be careful, Ethan. Use this smart, not hot. Don't confront her. Don't tip him off. We gather, we build, and when the time's right, we hit him where it hurts most, public exposure. Until then, you keep playing the good father. I nodded, but my mind was racing. How long before Melissa realized the trap she was in? How long before Adrian convinced her to mortgage the house, to drain Noah's college fund? That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the tick of the clock. Memories bled into fantasies, Melissa's lips on mine, then twisting into a sneer, Adrian's smug face, then shattered when the truth came out. It wasn't just rage or humiliation fueling me anymore. It was something sharper, hungrier, a need to take control of the narrative that had once destroyed me. By the time dawn lit the edges of my blinds, the decision was made. I wasn't just going to defend myself in court. I was going to dismantle Adrian Blake piece by piece until the whole town saw him for what he really was. And if Melissa got crushed in the fallout, well, maybe that was the price of betrayal. Ryan's investigation gave me weapons, but they were still locked in a drawer. To use them, I needed more. Hard proof. The kind of evidence that couldn't be brushed off as rumor or courtroom theatrics. And the one person who could get closest to Adrian, the one person he let his guard down around, was Noah. The idea ate at me for days before I even considered it out loud. Involving my son in this fight felt wrong. He was 10 years old, still more interested in comic books than custody battles. But the truth was, Adrian wasn't just trying to bleed Melissa dry. He was trying to replace me. If I didn't act, Noah would grow up thinking Adrian was a man to admire, the one to emulate. And that thought made me cold all over. So one Friday night, as Noah sat on the couch fiddling with his action figures, I pulled a small device from my pocket. It was nothing fancy, just a digital recorder Ryan had recommended, about the size of a thumb drive, with a single red button to start and stop. Noah, I said carefully, sitting down beside him, I need your help with something important. His eyes lit up. He loved the idea of helping, of being part of something bigger. Like what? This is kind of like a mission, I told him. Like spy stuff. Spy stuff? His grin widened. Like secret agents? Exactly. But it's important. And you have to promise me it stays between us. No telling Mom. No telling Adrian. He hesitated, sensing the seriousness beneath my tone. What do I have to do? I placed the recorder in his small hands. When you're over there, I want you to keep this in your backpack. If Adrian talks about money, about Mom's accounts, anything like that, press the button, just let it record. You don't have to say anything. Just let it capture what he says. Noah's brow furrowed. Is Adrian in trouble? The question sliced through me. I wanted to shield him, to tell him no, everything was fine. But lies had already poisoned too much of this fight. I settled on the half-truth. Adrian isn't who he says he is. I just need to prove it. For you. For us. He nodded slowly, gripping the recorder like it was a relic from some secret order. Okay, Dad. Mission accepted. That weekend, when Melissa picked him up, my chest tightened watching him carry that backpack. The same one with comic book pins and a fraying zipper. Now carrying the weight of something far heavier. 2 days later. When I picked him up, he handed the recorder to me in the truck before even buckling his seatbelt. I got something. His voice buzzed with excitement, like he'd just won a prize. I waited until he was asleep that night, before playing it back. The sound was muffled at first. Clinking glasses, Melissa's voice, and then Adrian's clear as a bell. Merge the accounts, Melissa. It's simpler. Less paperwork. Besides, it shows trust. Don't you trust me? Melissa's response was hesitant. It's just the house. My savings. I worked hard for those. Adrian's laugh was smooth, practiced, and I'm offering you a chance to double it. Triple it if we move fast. You think I'd let you lose? Baby, this is what partners do. The recording continued, him pressing, her resisting weakly, until finally she sighed. Maybe after the holidays. We'll see. It wasn't everything, but it was enough. Proof of manipulation, of financial coercion. Enough to make any judge think twice. I sat there in the dark, staring at the recorder, my hands shaking. Pride for Noah tangled with guilt for involving him. He carried the weight like a soldier, and I hated myself a little for asking him to. The next morning, I made him pancakes, extra syrup, extra chocolate chips. He grinned through the sugar rush, oblivious to the war he'd just helped me win a battle in. But inside, I made a promise. This would be the last time he'd be part of it. The fight was mine, not his. He deserved a childhood, not a courtroom strategy. Still, as I tucked the recorder into a locked drawer, I couldn't help but feel it. For the first time in months, I had leverage. Real, undeniable leverage. And Adrian Blake had no idea it was coming. Brookhaven's Harvest Festival had always been a town highlight. Hay bales on Main Street, strings of orange lights, and the smell of cinnamon sugar drifting from food stalls. For most people, it was nostalgia, comfort. For me, it was a battlefield waiting to happen. I'd chosen it deliberately. 6 years earlier, Melissa had used the same scent to show me off like a relic, parading Adrian in his polished shoes while whispering about my inadequacies. But this year, I had something she didn't. Proof. The plan came together slowly, with Ryan's cautious warnings echoing in my ears. Don't jump too soon. Don't hit too hard. Time it right, Ethan. The timing was perfect. Adrian was already wobbling financially, lawsuits tightening around his empire. Melissa, ever the ambitious attorney, had tied her name, her savings, even her firm's reputation to his schemes. And thanks to Noah's little recorder, I had Adrian's own words coaxing her into draining her accounts. That night, the crowd gathered near the bandstand for the town's raffle drawing. Kids darted between booths, parents sipped cider, and the air carried that mix of fried dough and damp leaves. Melissa stood near the front, radiant as ever in a fitted coat, Adrian by her side like a smug shadow. Noah lingered with me, gripping my hand, sensing something was about to happen. When the microphone was passed around for announcements, I stepped forward. My heart pounded, but my voice carried steady. Evening, everyone. Sorry to interrupt, but there's something you all deserve to know. Eyes turned, some curious, some wary. Melissa's froze on me, a smile still fixed but brittle. Adrian's smirk widened like he thought he knew the punchline already. I pulled the small speaker from my jacket pocket, pressed play, and let Adrian's voice echo across the square. Merge the accounts, Melissa. It's simpler, less paperwork. Besides, it shows trust. Don't you trust me? Gasps rippled through the crowd. Heads swiveled toward Melissa, then Adrian. Her face drained of color. His jaw tightened. I kept my voice calm. That's Adrian Blake, encouraging my ex-wife to hand over her savings, her house, everything she's worked for. He's done this before, twice, in fact. 2 ex-wives left bankrupt, while Adrian walked away richer. Don't take my word for it. Public records don't lie. From my folder, I read aloud. Lawsuits filed, bankruptcies, fraud claims, investor suits. Each one a nail in Adrian's carefully polished coffin. The crowd wasn't silent anymore. Murmurs spread like wildfire, people pulling out their phones, looking up case numbers, verify what I just laid bare. Melissa stood frozen, tears pooling but refusing to fall, her perfect mask cracking with each word. Adrian tried to rally. He stepped forward, raising his voice. This is taken out of context. Business risks are complicated, not something you small-town folks understand. Melissa knows. No, I cut in sharp. She doesn't know. And neither did his last wives. Neither did the investors he conned. But now everyone knows. The silence that followed wasn't mine to fill. It belonged to the weight of truth, finally exposed. Melissa's composure shattered. She turned to Adrian, eyes wide with something between fury and devastation. You told me. You promised. Her voice broke, and then so did she. Tears streamed down her face as she covered her mouth, shaking her head in disbelief. Adrian muttered something under his breath, then shoved past the crowd, storming off as whispers turned to open condemnation. His empire, his reputation, it was all ashes now. Melissa crumpled onto a bench, sobbing. For once, I didn't feel triumph in her pain. I wanted revenge, yes, but watching her unravel, I saw not the enemy who'd humiliated me in court, but the woman I'd once loved, broken by her own ambition. Noah tugged at my sleeve, his voice small. Dad? Are we okay now? I crouched down, pulling him into my arms. Yeah, buddy, we're okay. The festival carried on around us, music striking up again, kids laughing, the scent of cider sweet in the air. But for me, everything had shifted. For the first time in years, I wasn't a man defined by Melissa's lies. I wasn't a broken ex-husband whispered about in hardware stores. I was just a father who'd fought back, and won. And as I held Noah close under the autumn lights, I realized the fight had never really been about Melissa or Adrian. It had always been about him, about making sure he knew who his father truly was. In the weeks after the Harvest Festival, Brookhaven hummed with gossip. Only this time, it wasn't about me. For the first time in years, my name wasn't whispered with pity or derision. It was Adrian Blake's being dragged through mud, and Melissa's by extension. Everywhere I went, people stopped to talk. At the diner, the waitress who once gave me sad smiles now patted my shoulder and said, "Good on you, Ethan. About time someone stood up to that snake." At the hardware store, the old men who'd mocked me under their breath now asked about Noah. Their tone different, respectful, vindicated. Melissa tried to do damage control, but once the tide turns in a small town, it never turns back. Adrian packed up and left within a week, tail between his legs, lawsuits nipping at his heels. Melissa was left with the rubble of her reputation, her finances tangled in his fraud, her pride shattered in the very same public square where she once paraded her new life. She called me, once, late at night, her voice raw from crying. "Ethan, thank you. You could have destroyed me too. You could have dragged my name down with his, but you didn't. I stayed quiet for a long time. I didn't do it for you, Melissa. I did it for Noah." She sniffled. "I know, and I'll drop the custody case. I'm sorry. It wasn't forgiveness, not exactly, but it was a crack in the armor, an admission she'd never have made years earlier. For me, it was enough. Life settled into something I hadn't known in a long time. Peace. I woke up, cooked Noah breakfast, dropped him at school without suspicion trailing me like a shadow. Work picked back up too. Clients called again, jobs lined up, the phone ringing not with gossip but opportunity. But the biggest change wasn't the town or Melissa or even Adrian's downfall. It was in me. For years, I'd carried that humiliation from court like a wound that wouldn't close. I let it define me, made it the lens through which I saw every sideways glance, every rumor. I thought revenge would fix that exposing Adrian, watching Melissa's mask shatter, would finally fill the hollow inside me. And in some ways it did. But the real victory wasn't in watching them fall. It was in realizing I didn't need to stand on their ashes to stand tall myself. One Saturday morning, Noah and I were in the backyard. He was building a lopsided fort out of scrap lumber while I grilled breakfast sausage. He looked up, face smeared with dirt, and said, "Dad, I like it here. I like being with you. It feels real." I swallowed the lump in my throat. That's all I ever wanted, Bud, for this to feel real. Melissa stopped by a few weeks later to drop off some of Noah's school supplies. She lingered on the porch, eyes tired but softer than I remembered. For a moment, I saw the woman I'd married, the one who used to curl against me on cold nights, who whispered dreams of the future before life hardened us both. "You won, Ethan," she said quietly. I shook my head. "No, Melissa, I just stopped losing." She gave a faint smile, then turned to leave. As she walked down the driveway, I felt no triumph, no bitterness, just release. That night, after Noah fell asleep, I sat on the porch with a glass of bourbon. The autumn air was sharp, the sky scattered with stars. For the first time in years, my chest wasn't tight, my fists weren't clenched. The real revenge wasn't Adrian's humiliation or Melissa's collapse. The real revenge was this: peace. Knowing my son trusted me. Knowing I could walk down Main Street without shame. Knowing I had built a life, not perfect, but mine, and no one could take it away again. Melissa would have to rebuild from ashes. Adrian would keep running from the wreckage he created. But me? I had Noah's love, Noah's laughter, and the quiet strength that comes from surviving the fire and walking out whole. And that was enough. When I look back now, it feels almost unreal, like my life split into two timelines. The first one ended in that courtroom 6 years ago when Melissa shredded me in front of the town, leaving me broken, humiliated, and branded as less than a man. The second began when I decided not to give up. I've walked through hell since then, through whispers in hardware aisles, through nights alone with bourbon and silence, through false police reports and custody battles designed to bury me alive. And yet here I stand, still Noah's father, still standing tall. Melissa rebuilt too, though slower, shakier. After Adrian fled and the lawsuits caught up, she was forced to swallow a bitter dose of her own medicine. Pride stripped, reputation tattered. She became what she once accused me of being, fragile. I don't rejoice in that. I don't need to. Life has a way of balancing the scales on its own. Adrian? He'll keep running, scamming someone else, always chasing the next easy fortune. Men like him don't stop until they're in a cell or a grave. He was never the real fight anyway. He was just a storm passing through, one that Melissa invited into our lives. The real fight was for Noah, and in the end, that's the only one that mattered. He sees me now, not the broken man his mother painted, not the shadow she mocked, but his dad, the one who shows up, who keeps promises, who fights without losing his soul. Sometimes he asks questions I can't answer. Dad, why did Mom believe Adrian? Why did she try to take me away? I can only pull him close and say, because sometimes people forget what really matters, but I never will. That's the truth of it. I don't carry hate for Melissa anymore. Anger, yes, it flickers now and then when I think about the years I lost. But hate? That would keep me chained to her forever. And I'm done with chains. Brookhaven changed its tune too. The same town that once snickered at my failures now nods with respect when I walk by. They've seen me drag through the mud, and they've seen me come out the other side without bowing my head. That matters more than I expected. But it's not everything. Peace, I've learned, isn't found in proving everyone wrong. It's found in knowing who you are when no one's watching. It's in quiet mornings with Noah over pancakes. It's in finishing a long day of work, dirt under my fingernails, and seeing my son swinging in the backyard. It's in realizing I don't need to fight every battle anymore, because the war is already won. I thought revenge would taste sweeter, that exposing Adrian, breaking Melissa's illusions, would fill the hollow inside me. But revenge is just fire. It burns hot, then fades to smoke. What lasts is something quieter. Dignity, self-respect, freedom from the weight of someone else's lies. If you've read this far, maybe you've been where I've been, betrayed, humiliated, written off. Maybe you're still in the fire, wondering if you'll ever breathe again. If I can offer anything, it's this. Don't let the people who break you define you. Stand tall, even when you're on your knees. Gather evidence, gather strength, gather faith, whatever you need. And when the time comes, fight not for revenge, but for peace, because peace is the real revenge. And now, as I sit on the porch with Noah's laughter drifting from the yard, the autumn leaves swirling like embers, I finally understand. I didn't just survive Melissa Harding. I survived myself. The broken man she tried to create. And I'll never be broken again.